I'm joined today by John Smid, who spent 25 years trying to remove homosexuality from his life. He was a nationally known leader in the ex-gay movement for over 2 decades. And after trying heterosexual marriage twice, he is now happily married to his husband, Larry, and he is helping others accept their homosexuality. John, I first came across your work. You were being interviewed in one or two documentaries that I saw, and your comments just seemed so in line with addressing what now is the increasing awakening that is going on to the dangers of ex-gay therapy. Let's go back to the beginning if we can. Talk to us about sexuality and when you were younger. What was it that you felt yourself to be?
Well, when I was growing up, of course, it was in the late 50s and early 60s, and a time when we didn't talk about sexuality much. And for personally, I was very naive and unexperienced. I was sexually a virgin until I got married the first time when I was 19 years old. So a lot of my observation of my sexuality is kind of retrospective. It's clear to me that when I was growing up, I had a tremendous amount of attraction for and a curiosity about men and their bodies and sexuality in general. The first awakening of homosexuality for me was more emotional. I remember kind of just thinking in my mind what it would be like to have an intimate relationship with another man that was someone that I connected with and really cared about. But I didn't really call it homosexual originally. I just thought it was kind of extreme relationships. I remember there was a guy that I was very attracted to when I was a little over 18 years old, and it was a very emotional and very romantic attraction I had for him, but we didn't really talk about it, and I didn't explore it much. And it wasn't until I had been married the first time, been married about 2 or 3 years, when I realized that this was very homosexual in nature, that that's exactly what I was dealing with. And so very quickly I began to explore that and think about it and process it, and it ended up where I had kind of a one-time affair with a man that I knew at my job. And that was just this amazing awareness of what homosexuality was for me. And very quickly, I told my wife that I was gay, and we got a divorce, and I began to pursue homosexuality. As a young 20-something person, I pursued it with a lot of promiscuity and going out to the clubs and bars that were available. But it was very clear to me that I was gay. I didn't hide it. I wasn't closeted at all. It ended up being, I was involved in several kind of short-term relationships, and they became painful for me because of their the ending for each one. They would kind of crash and burn, and it was at that point I was introduced to Christianity.
Now, not to interrupt, growing up, were you in a religious family or at all religious?
Well, it was kind of split. I was raised as a Sunday Catholic because my dad was a very strong Catholic. So we went to catechism and Catholic practices, but we didn't really talk about religion much. It wasn't something that I had many conversations about. It was just kind of a cultural practice for us as a family.
And who reintroduced you to Christianity?
It was a girl that I worked with that was very open with me. She was very kind and loving, and she knew that I was gay, and she talked very openly about her life and her past and things that she had gotten involved in. So I trusted her. I trusted her openness and her honesty, and she introduced me to an evangelical church that was very alive, and very quickly she began to talk to me about the possibility that God could deliver me from homosexuality, that it was something that I could change, that it could be taken away and I could live a kind of a normal heterosexual life. And that was attractive to me because of the painful relationships I'd had, and it was attractive because who wouldn't want to be just kind of the cultural norm? You know, homosexuals are not part of the normal flow of the culture of our life, and that was attractive to want to change. And so
at that point, John, it wasn't, if I'm understanding you correctly, it wasn't that you were under the impression necessarily that at some point you had chosen homosexuality, but it was more that, hey, if there's this process by which I could become heterosexual, maybe that would be a good thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. My understanding was that my being gay came from problems with my relationships with my parents.
Hmm.
It came from a naivety, a curiosity that had developed out of that. It was definitely my thinking that it was a developmental problem, that it was not. I didn't consider it an illness,
Yeah.
but I considered it a broken sexual attraction, a broken sexuality. That if I could resolve the family issues, if I could resolve the painful situations that I've been involved in as a child, then my sexuality would begin to develop into heterosexuality. I believed it was a latent development versus something I chose.
So walk us through what the beginnings of that process were.
Well, I was single and I was celibate for about 2 years in my early Christian faith, and I thought, well, I don't want to be alone the rest of my life, so somehow I've got to figure out this heterosexual thing, this process of learning what it's like to relate to a woman in an intimate way, and very quickly I met a girl that was a very high quality, very substantial woman that I developed a friendship with, and I believed that it was possible that we could be married,
Hmm.
that would work with her because we were compatible. I don't want to say we were attracted to one another because I was very aware that I was not sexually attracted to her. But the ex-gay movement and ex-gay counseling really led me to believe that I could be attracted to one woman, that I could find that intimacy, I could find that attraction. And so I really, actually, I got married to her with that in mind, thinking, well, this is going to eventually work, that somehow this is going to become a reality for me. And we were able to have sex. The biological functions were there, but I didn't have any of the real intimate desire. It was always something that was fraught with anxiety, and the performance was difficult for me. It was not natural to me at all.
And did you have children in that relationship?
No, I had children from my first
Oh,
marriage.
you did. Okay.
My second marriage, we chose not to have children. My former wife just didn't want to have children. She wasn't really interested in having children, and in my mind, I welcomed that. As I already had my children, I didn't want to have any more. And so it was through, year after year of being married that I would seek counseling, and I went to conferences and workshops and lots of relationships with other people to have discussions about what it was like to be married and have these strong attractions. And everyone kept assuring me, if you're obedient, if you follow God, if you do what He asks you to do, then He's going to honor that. And at some point, you're going to find the deliverance you're looking for and the freedom in that relationship that you really desire. And so I, just did that year after year after year. Finally, after we'd been married about 10 or 11 years, our relationship really kind of became celibate. We didn't have sex any longer, and that became a tremendous anxiety for me because I thought, oh, if I'm a good Christian man, if I'm a good husband, I should be having sex with my wife. I mean, that's what loving relationships have, and so I felt guilty and ashamed and
And
embarrassed.
during this time, were you now taking more of a sort of leadership role in the ex-gay movement?
Oh, very much so. I was the director of Love in Action, which was one of the most well-known ministries in the United States and actually internationally. I was on the board of directors for Exodus International. I was a conference speaker, a keynote speaker. I was interviewed and known throughout many media outlets. I was a very prominent leader, one of the most prominent within the ex-gay culture.
And
Uh,
was the timing of the end of that second marriage coinciding with when you realized you have to not be part of the ex-gay movement anymore, or did those two things happen at different times?
Well, they were somewhat different. I resigned from my position at Love in Action in 2008. And that resignation had nothing to do with me accepting my orientation. It didn't have anything to do with any kind of changes in my perspective. It was all an internal decision that I made. It was just clear to me that it was time to resign and to move on to something else. But very, very quickly after that resignation, I thought to myself, I'm not an ex-gay leader anymore. I don't really owe any allegiance to any mindset. I want to just think about this. I want to really process what's going on. And I became introduced to some ex-gays, we kind of refer to this as Christian men who had reconciled their faith and their sexuality. And I was shocked at some of the conversations, and I was shocked at the amount of peace that they found in their life, and how they had completely reconciled that they were gay and they were Christian, and they found a way to really find peace in that. And I just thought, gosh, I wish I could have that, But I began to just help other people. I began to be supportive of Christian men and women that mostly were involved at Love in Action, that were seeking some kind of balance, some kind of reconciliation, and I was able to support them and encourage them. And finally, I sat back one day and I thought, if I've got this much grace and forgiveness and kindness for them, then I need to treat myself the same way. Shouldn't I be as kind and as gracious with my own life as I am with theirs? And finally, I looked at my life and realized that my marriage was never a real marriage. It never had the kind of intimacy or connection. And I went to my wife and I said, I'm just going to be honest. I'm gay. We know that. She knew my life and my history, of course. She was the wife of an ex-gay ministry leader, and I didn't hide anything. But I just went to her and I said, we really have to be honest. This really isn't working, and it hasn't worked. It never has worked. If we look back at our relationship, we have to admit that sexual intimacy and sexual connection between us has never, ever been satisfying. It's never worked for us. And frankly, I'm not willing to live the rest of my life like this. And I'm just going to be honest, and I think we need to separate. And of course, she was devastated and brokenhearted about her life and my life and what was going on, but I had to be authentic. I just had to finally be authentic. So, there were many people who accused that of being a selfish decision. And I said, frankly, if you want to be honest about this, I have sacrificed 25 years of my life to the false notion that I could become ex-gay, that somehow homosexuality could leave. And I've given 25 years to this process, and it's never worked. It's never been satisfying.
And quite simply, those who claim that they are successfully ex-gay, every indication is that that is not actually a thing. How do you characterize those individuals? Are they merely gay individuals who have decided to live a life that mirrors one that is not gay, or what exactly are they doing?
Well, I want to respect and honor the individual decisions that people make in their sexuality. I think that we can make choices as to how we're going to live. And I do know people that live a celibate life. They've chosen celibacy. That's the way they find peace with themselves and with their faith or their culture or whatever that looks like for them. There are also people who have gotten married with what I call a mixed orientation marriage. There are people who have found satisfaction in those marriages. There are people who find an intimacy or a closeness or a relationship fulfillment that really works for them, and that's a choice they've made, and that's fine. I want to respect that and honor that. But I also want to be honest that there are far too many people like myself who do not find that's a satisfactory decision. And the whole ex-gay counseling, what we call sexual orientation change therapy, that really is a facade, and it's extremely harmful because of the message it sends to people that they can't be gay, that it's wrong, it's hazardous, it's sinful, it's broken, it's anti-God, all those shaming and condemning messages that come through ex-gay sexual orientation change therapy. And I just want to really be strong in communicating that people can live a moral and a satisfying gay life and have a full faith and a full relationship with God if they want to choose to do that. You know, I have personally I've discovered that, and I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be more satisfied than I am today, living authentically as a gay man in a marriage to my husband that is incredibly fulfilling. This is a decision I've made about the way I'm going to live as a homosexual man, as a gay man.
All right, we've been speaking with John Smid. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
You're welcome. My privilege.